And now, welcome to an evening with young men resolute in their faith in Christ Jesus. That faith leads them to take a stand for truth and justice. They would now like to share their perspective with you on what is going on around us. From an undisclosed location in Middle Tennessee, we are the Patriots of Faith. Good evening, welcome to our show tonight. This is the Patriots of Faith on location. I guess you could say we're not an undisclosed location. If folks that know that landmark behind us know that it's the Broad Street Post Office in Cookeville, the historic post office here. So welcome to our show. It's Monday, June 1st, and we are the Patriots of Faith. I'm Jordan Iwanas.
And I'm Tyler Carr. We're going to start out with some news for you tonight. I just got back from a trip to Disney World, and I think the reason they call it the happiest place on earth is because they don't have TVs everywhere where you see everything that's going on in the world around you, because a lot of it's not too good. But we're going to catch you up on some of that stuff that's been going on in case you've been at Disney World like I have, or in case you've just been out of the loop.
I haven't been recently, but like you said, you have to be in the hotel room or a hotel lobby or a sports bar to be able to see catch up on any news or anything like that, which is a good thing. I'm real familiar with that area because I've been there on my honeymoon, and it's been a family affair to go there on honeymoons as well too, so it's a great place to go.
It's a wonderful place. But we do have some news stories for you today. First of all, if you haven't heard, and by the time you watch this video, I'm sure you will have heard, Vanity Fair released a photo today on the cover on their cover of the female version of Bruce Jenner, and her name is Caitlyn. And the reason I want to bring that up is because of some of the social media comments I've seen on those articles. And what I've noticed is that these arguments are really emotionally driven. There's really no ground behind it, and everyone seems to want to have an opinion, but it's all emotion that backs it, and they seem to let that emotion just take hold of them. And even Christians seem to, when they should have a loving attitude about this, even though they disagree with what he's done, seem to have a really hateful attitude sometimes. And I think that's something that we really need to think about, which is how we come across on social media when we comment on things like this. We need to make sure we have a loving attitude. For example, somebody commented disgusting on it, and someone replied back, "You're disgusting."
Childish high school arguments.
Yeah, these are the type of arguments that I'm talking about, and it wasn't just that one. It was like every single one, hundreds of the same types of conversations. And so whenever you try to comment on something on social media or any kind of issue like that, make sure you're going about it in the right way, and in a way that's not going to make Christians or it's not going to make you look worse than you intend. Because I think we do that sometimes.
It's like we were talking about a little while ago before the recording. I was mentioning about how a lot of folks get frustrated or sad about a certain perspective, and they don't know how to separate their emotions. The frustration or sadness becomes anger, and it's not pertaining to even a person that you have any control over, anything, no situation you have any control over, but people will let anger become that I guess you could say emotion, and that's something that we all have to be careful about, that we have our emotions in the right channel.
Absolutely. And while we're on this subject, the media has really been hyping everybody up about Bruce Jenner and his transition from a man to a woman. And what really bothers me about that is that there are so many things going on in the world, so many terrible things that are going on, so many issues that people need to be aware of that aren't being brought to light. Yet they choose to take this one man and really hype it up in the media. And that really bothers me. That's something that I think is concerning.
That's something else we had talked about earlier this evening too, before coming on the air, and talked about how the media will spend a lot of time on this Jenner story, or talk about the passing of Anna Nicole Smith or Michael Jackson or Robin Williams. Like you said, there's so many issues going on. There's genocides and starvation going on in many areas. There's folks that really have issues to deal with regarding radical Islam and terror going on. There's genocides going on right now as we speak in the Middle East with Egypt and Coptic Christians folks there, and in the Middle East there's economic issues to be concerned about and everything else as well. And the media is trying to, no one would even care about who Bruce Jenner is or anybody else like this if the media didn't put these stories to the forefront. And it's like, who's Bruce Jenner? He's one out of 7-8 billion people on the planet, and he decided to make this this decision on his life and that sort of thing. So why on earth is this driving the news when there's so much else to be talking about? A lot of decisions being made right now that people need to be aware of.
But moving on from that issue, we're going to talk about some more important things. This was from Yahoo News. The U.S. Supreme Court today ruled in favor of a man who posted rap lyrics on Facebook that talked in graphic detail about killing his unfaithful ex-wife. And it was an 8-1 ruling, and it overturned a 44-month prison sentence for this man named Anthony Ellenis of Pennsylvania. And the court claimed that it must be able to prove criminal intent for those comments to be considered worthy of conviction, and that Ellenis' words were not much different from those of rappers like Eminem. That was really their reasoning behind their ruling there. Ellenis, he said that his words were intended as a form of art therapy, and that he wasn't aware of their threatening nature. And when you hear, if you go and read what he posted, it was obviously threatening. There's no question about it. Any person of average or even low intelligence could know that it was intended as threatening, or it appeared threatening anyway. Critics of the ruling, they say that a ruling like this could result in some people not being convicted that should be convicted, and that it could also lead to uncertainty for courts and Facebook users as to what exactly are the boundaries there. Some say that the case should be sent back to a lower appeals court in order to uphold that conviction. And the question that it creates is that of whether or not a person has to believe that his or her statements are threatening in order to cross the boundaries of free speech. And that's an important issue. And we're going to talk a little more in the next segment about the importance of defining these things, because there's some important implications that come from those definitions. But this case creates a question there. Here's his lyrics. They included statements about these aren't his lyrics, but they included statements about, quote, killing his wife, knifing a female FBI agent, and shooting school children. I don't know how those things could be deemed non-threatening.
Yeah, especially if you're taking the time to post those.
And not even, but just the subject matter.
Absolutely.
Even if you're not intending it as threatening, the subject matter is still.
That's raises eyebrows real quick. That's for sure.
You shouldn't talk about. Here's something interesting. Moving on from that story. This is from San Jose Mercury News. A South Bay, California recycling firm is looking for a woman who dropped one of the original first-generation Apple I computers off at a recycling firm. And the reason this is such a big deal is that it's one of the originals, those original Apple I desktops that were built by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ron Wayne back in 1976. What was happening is the woman was cleaning out her house after her husband had died, and she shows up at this recycling firm with this computer and a load of other stuff. And she tells them that she just wants to drop it off, she wants to get rid of it. And they asked if she wants a receipt, and she said, no, I don't want anything. But the vice president of that recycling firm says he remembers her, and so all that she has to do now is show up at the firm.
What is the value again of that computer?
Well, that's what I was getting to.
Okay.
The computer was sold to a private collector for $200,000.
Wow.
$200,000. And the company policy is that they have to split the profit 50-50 between the donor and the company. And so that woman is due $100,000. And all she has to do to claim that $100,000 is show up at the recycling firm, and the vice president will recognize her face.
Wow, that's no chump change even in California. I mean, we know that the cost of living up there is outrageous through the roof.
Oh, yeah.
$100,000 is still worth claiming, even if it's even in the Golden State.
Definitely. But do you have anything?
Yeah, of course. One of the big stories and issues driving the news lately has been the flooding and weather situations going on in the Southern Plains, more specifically Texas and Oklahoma. It's been a historic weather situation in those areas. 46 fatalities known of so far, 27 in Texas from flooding alone, 4 from flooding in Oklahoma. 14 passed away from a tornado near the United States-Mexico border, and it was in Mexico but near Del Rio in Texas. And one also passed away from Texas in Mexico. But there's still 12 people missing from flooding in Texas. And it has been occurring. This issue has been occurring since May 23rd, so it's been going on now for well over a week. And Hays County, Texas, it's in the Austin metropolitan area, right between Austin and San Antonio. That area was particularly hard hit with blocks of homes that were leveled.
Wow.
Thousands of, I think from the story I saw, it's a couple thousand people are homeless, at least over there. And actually in that county, Hays County, is where those 12 people were missing, because what happened was they went to a vacation home near the river there, the Blanco River, I believe it's called, and the river came up so fast it actually swept the house downstream with them all inside. One gentleman was pulled from the waters nearby, but eyewitnesses said they saw the house pretty much fall apart when it hit a bridge going down the river. So there's still 12 people missing from that situation. The Houston and Austin metro areas were particularly hard hit as well. I believe that the story I saw is about 2,000 cars were left stranded on interstates as the water rose in Houston. This was right after a Rockets playoff game that happened last weekend, actually. And the story that came out today was that enough rain fell in the areas that were hit across the state. Not the whole state got a lot of rain, but the areas that received rain, they received enough rain through the month of May to cover the state 8 inches deep with water. We know Texas is one of the nation's largest states. It's massive. It takes hours to go from one side of the state to the other down interstate travel.
Oh yeah.
So 8 inches deep on that much water fell from the sky over the course of a month. It's just outrageous.
That's incredible.
That's a historic. I don't know of any other storm that in recent history compares to that.
And if you could imagine several lakes falling from the sky all at one time, that's about what it would be like.
It is crazy. Also, there's been a lot of developments on the presidential race coming up. We've got some new candidates. Last Wednesday, the 27th of May, 2012 candidate Rick Santorum, former Pennsylvania senator, jumped into the race on Wednesday. And then former New York Governor George Pataki, he's been out of office for almost a decade, he jumped in last Thursday. Today, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham jumped in. He makes the 9th Republican now to jump into the race, and I believe he's now the 6th sitting U.S. Senator also to jump into the race. Martin O'Malley, we've talked about him on the show a few times, former Maryland Governor and former Maryland Governor and former Baltimore Mayor. He actually used Baltimore as his setting yesterday to jump into the Democratic nomination for the presidential race, and he talked about, it was funny because they played clips of him talking about how Baltimore is like America, and America is like Baltimore. I don't know if the country wants to be like Baltimore with what's been going on over there. We've covered that on our show a number of times too, but it's an interesting way to cover the show. So as we said, there's now 9 Republicans: Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina, Lindsey Graham, the most recent one, Mike Huckabee, George Pataki, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and Rick Santorum. A couple candidates will be jumping in, we understand, coming up. Donald Trump, he's been flirting with the race several different elections now, but apparently he's going to use his Trump Tower in New York as a setting, and he will jump into the race, is what people say, on June 16th, about halfway through the month. John Kasich, the Ohio governor, looks to run it after the end of this month. And also Scott Walker's looking at late June, early July, is what the folks that know him are saying. And there's 3 Democrats known to be running: Hillary Clinton, Martin O'Malley, and Bernie Sanders. Hillary supposedly here later this month will also be making an announcement at Roosevelt Park, I believe, Roosevelt Island in New York. And Sanders, the interesting thing about Bernie Sanders, news came out a couple days ago that last week that he wrote an essay in 1972 fantasizing about raping women. So that's a shocking development there. I'm sure that's going to hurt him in his race. Looking at the polls so far, we won't go through all these numbers. We're running close on time. In Iowa, Walker's running away with Iowa right now. We know national popular vote's important, but the states are very important. Walker's running away with it, with Rubio a close second. New Hampshire, Bush, Walker, and Paul are all close. Rubio not far behind. And South Carolina, it's with Bush and Walker. Graham's not far behind. In Pennsylvania, Walker is ahead with Rick Santorum, the favorite son, in a close 3-way. And to show the national picture how close it is, 5 candidates in a recent poll got to 10%. that's what we got on the national picture so far.
Well, we are running out of time, so thank you for watching.